Welcome to CWS Christian Writing and Speaking. I'm your host, Jackie Wilson, and today's guest is a homeschooling mom of 5, and she went from being a depressed coffee addict to being passionate about our life stories. She says that we are all a product of our past, but the stories we tell ourselves don't have to keep us stuck. She is a life and soul coach. She helps people gain a clear understanding to what they need in life and discuss tools to help them get it. She has done 6 years of post-secondary education in the teacher realm, and she loves good, deep conversations about things that matter. And what I especially like about today's guest is that she loves to share stories that help people feel less alone in the world. Let's welcome to the CWS stage, Miss Melanie Gall.
You so much, Jackie. I know we were chatting just a little bit before the show, but I just feel completely honored and blessed to be here. Partially because I think what God is doing in my life needs to be celebrated and to be shared, but also it's especially incredible and honoring to do it with other Christian women who love Jesus, who are on the same journey. And yes, my story doesn't have to stand alone, but your story also helps me. And so once we're in this space together, it just is my favorite on earth. So thank you.
Yeah. And so now you got the audience all hyped up. You got to share your story about how you came to the point to
Yeah.
be where you are helping coach people and sharing the stories that help them feel less alone.
Yeah. My story revolves around the much maybe misunderstood or talked about word of depression and anxiety. And so often we claim that anxiety as ours. My anxiety. Well, I struggle with my nerves or my anxiety, my mental health, my poor mental health. And that was something that I fell into the trap of. And at the time I thought, okay, it's definitely deserved. We had 5 kids, 5 and under. My husband worked with the police force here in Canada. And we had just moved. We were just about to move to a rural setting when I walked upstairs and hours after my son's vaccinations, found him blue and unmoving in
Mm.
the crib. And that started me down this cascade of just utter chaos in my mind, not knowing when the next time was that I would find him like that. At that point, my husband, just with all of his training, was able to revive him. But my son Jed went on to have 3 different types of seizures and a major
Mm.
speech delay. And there was just so much involved with that. Well, that happened. And then 7 days later, we moved where we knew nobody. We were on an acreage. I decided we needed a dog. There was just so much chaos happening, not just in my own mind, but in our family, right? We were busy with all
Yeah.
these little toddlers, but also there was forest fires that caused us to need to be evacuated. We had the next spring 3 or 4 floods where I had to do the work by myself or call other people to help because Pete was working too much. And we had
Mm.
just major issues that I couldn't get out of bed anymore. I actually put cucumbers on the bottom shelf so that the kids, if they were hungry, could just go ahead and find it for themselves. So there was just this deep, deep hole and deep pit that I found myself in. And I remember people saying to me, "Well, Mel, the joy of the Lord is your strength." I'm like, yes, that's right. You just need to cry out to him. I'm like, I am. Like, I don't know what
Yeah.
to do anymore. And I tried all kinds of things. I tried vision boards, not just pinning words and pictures, but like drawing my vision board and what did I want life to look like. And it was completely opposite of where I found myself. I found essential oils helped, a little bit. I found Tony Robbins and other big names kind of to help with personal growth, thinking that that was the issue. I meditated, I prayed, I journaled, I went on silent retreats. I did all these things, but nothing ever got to the root of what was actually happening for me. And they helped. They were all tools. But I couldn't even go on play dates because then what happens if Jed had a seizure or he fell down the stairs or he
Yeah.
choked while he was eating or who's around? Is there a pillow? Could he fall and hit his head? Like all of these things. And it was just too much for me to bear. And so one of my girlfriends says, did you know actually, because God created us whole beings, that every part affects the other. So did you know that gut health and mental health are directly linked? And I thought, oh my word, having so many kids in such a short amount of time, stress, lack of sleep, the food I was eating was crap, right? That you're when you're in your survival mode, you get those
Yeah.
Oreos down and you get, your milkshake or whatnot from McDonald's. And of course, my gut health. And that started me down this road of inner healing. And as I started to feel better, I could do better.
Yeah.
And the Lord used this as such an incredible tool in my life to say, whoa, how intricately has He made us, and how fearfully and wonderfully, the psalmist says. And so that was the beginning of my journey towards wholeness and towards understanding how God has designed us.
Yeah, I love it. And so you call yourself a life and a soul coach.
Yeah.
Can you delve deeper into what it is to be a soul coach?
Absolutely. So years ago, when I started to share then about these products that I had found, people would say to me, how do you know what questions to ask? And I'm like, well, I don't know. And I, like there would be a tricky thing, excuse me, with a customer, and I would just pray about it and just speak what came to mind. And again, people are like, how did you know how to say that? And I'm like, I don't know. And I started to, when people start to say things, and this would be something for your listeners, if there is something that people are completely affirming over and over and over again in your life, go with that. Get curious about, like, what is it about this? How do I reveal God's glory and how He's made me? And
Mm,
so continually kind of leaning into the fact that I ask questions, maybe that other people don't ask all the time, or I desire to help you clear the muddle. Like, I can see what you're saying kind of between the lines somehow. And
mhm,
this is how you know that it's a gift, because it's not something you necessarily study for. It's not something that you necessarily, you know, spend all your time figuring out, but it just comes naturally. And gifts of the Spirit do that, don't they? And so as I thought, this is something that I could do. My very first foray into it was marriage mentorship, where my
mhm,
husband and I would just kind of have couples underneath us, whether or not we were in um, a church setting with a video, or if it was just privately at our house. And we started to ask just questions about ourselves first.
mhm.
How did we get so passionate about marriage? How did we get so passionate about helping people? When did people do that for us? How did we learn it? And just question by question, we sort of found ourselves in this space of, we can really help others, because I was feeling better. I had more capacity. I had more patience. I had more joy to not just pour into my own family, but then looking outward. So when I say life and soul coach, technically I am designated as a certified leadership coach, because Jackie, you in your house, you're a leader.
Yeah.
In your spheres of influence, you're a leader. In your circle of friends, you're a leader, because of the gifts that God has given you for His glory to shine in anywhere you see, right? But a lot of people, a lot of moms don't see themselves as leaders. And so for me to really kind of start to tease out, what does this mean for me to be a leadership coach? One of my clients says, you are the best life coach I ever had. And I was like, uh, I don't know. Like, I don't know if that fits with me really. But because I bring the spiritual development aspect to it, the spiritual mentorship, perhaps, or just constantly bringing people back to truth. What does Jesus say? Um, our foundation and what we believe about God actually is our filter and is our worldview for everything. And so, are we willing to take a look at that and recognizing that I feel really comfortable to maybe speak that into people's lives? So that is how I ended up getting the title that I have.
Wonderful. Can you tell people a little bit more about your program, how they can connect with you concerning that?
Absolutely. Super simple, www.melaniegallcoaching.com. Or I actually have a podcast called Sustained in the Middle. And this is where Jackie knew that I told stories. They're only about 5 minutes long, most of them, just about things in my life, embarrassing things that happen on our honeymoon, or, I go more into the stories of our forest fires and floods, or I talk about how did we make a decision to leave policing and what did that involve? And always bringing it back to Jesus. And so if you want to look me up, I'm on all platforms that way, and share and like all just the normal things you do for people that you love. And I think that adds value to your life. So those are two main ways that you can get a hold of me.
Yeah. And you have to tell people why you feel like stories are the most important aspect of what you do. Because, like I said before, you say this is the way that you help people feel less alone.
Mm-hmm. Let's take a little bit of a look neurobiologically. So we are born with a set of genetics. We all know that, but there's actually another side of science called epigenetics, where every situation that happens to us from even when we're in the womb, a positive experience or a negative experience could actually turn on or off how that gene performs inside of your
Mm.
body and inside of your mind. So this is why counseling and coaching and whatnot is super important, because as questions start to get asked of you, you're bringing up things and stories that happened to you when you were younger, and you might not be able to connect it, but the ability to be able to stop and say, wow, the first time I felt that in my feeling, in my heart, in my soul, was when Uncle Johnny said this to me when I was 5.
Mm.
Because at that moment, when we are faced with a form of like trauma isn't ever the actual situation that happens to you, it's how we interpret it.
Mm.
And that is where the enemy comes in and offers us a lie. He offers us something to believe that is completely false. It might look good and it might look like the truth, but it's not exactly the words of scripture, and it's not the life-giving words of Christ. And so in that moment when Uncle Johnny said that, you may have believed a lie. It could sound something like, I'm never good enough. It could sound
Mm.
something like, I'll never be wanted. It could sound something like, I'm alone and no one understands me. Okay, so then every situation that happens, our brain automatically is looking for information to prove our point. And so our whole life, then we go and we start making all these decisions and reactions and assumptions based on this story.
Mm.
And so as we start to understand our story, this is where Jesus says,
Yeah.
right there, right there where you're hurting, right there when you feel your heart quicken or
Yeah.
your armpit start sweating, there's something in there for you. I want to show you my glory. I want to show you my healing. Are you willing to take a look at your story? And there's just some beautiful people that have taught me more and more about our story and what dysregulation looks like, right? When we start to recognize I'm a little bit overreacting to that situation. I wonder why.
Mm.
And we feel dysregulated. That is a clue that something happened. Or when another form of dysregulation, like just get super angry. Why did I get angry?
Yeah.
What's behind that for me? So that's just a little bit of kind of how I interpret story and why I feel it's so important.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Melanie. Melanie, can you tell people what's next for you?
So much. I don't even, excuse me, I don't even have anything concrete. This is where, I teach my team with my gut health team. What are your big, hairy, scary dreams? Years ago, the Lord put on my heart a dream to do a marriage retreat center. And
Mm.
I don't know how, I don't know when, but that is sort of what we're gunning for. The most recent podcast, there's 3 of them, and I do it on sex and story. And what does it look like to take a look at our view on the most intimate, beautiful, worshipful experience that allows us to see who the Godhead is? How did that affect you? What happened to you when you were younger? Are you able to talk to your kids about that without shame and without hiding? And why don't we talk to our kids about that more? And just all of that. And those are about 25 to 30 minutes. And I can see that holds something of value for me in the future, whether or not it's a book or speaking. But right now, just pouring into my podcast ministry and continuing with my one-on-one or marriage coaching.
Yeah. Can you please tell people your website again?
Sure, www.melanie, Melanie Gall, Gall, coaching.com.
All right. Now, Melanie, as we wrap up this interview, can you give the audience a final word? What is the one thing you absolutely want them to know that you feel like they can take throughout their life?
Throughout their life, that the Lord loves you more than you realize, that even when bad situations happen for us or to us, I gave it away, when even bad situations happen to us, to stop and take note and take a look at what if this situation is happening for me?
Hmm.
What if this situation is revealing things about me that Jesus wants to just take and to mold and to gently shape you into who he has called you to be. So often we think very selfishly, well, what did I do? What did I do wrong? This can't be my fault. I can't believe this is happening to me. And it's like, can we just take that mindset and just tweak it? Lord, what are you doing? Lord, what is my role? Lord, thank you that I'm not alone, but I don't understand. Can you please
Mm.
help me? Right. And so, what if this situation that in your life is happening not to you, but for you?
Yeah, I love it. CWS audience, you have heard Melanie. The challenge is issued. Can you take an honest look at yourself and question why you're reacting the way that you're reacting? And think about it as it's not happening to you, but for you, so that you can become the greater self that God has created you to be. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. And until next time, beautiful people, God bless.